Call for the City Council meeting of Wednesday, February 19th, 2020 at 7:30 PM. Mr. Winarski, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon. Please rise for a moment of silent meditation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of minutes from the City Council meeting of Wednesday, February 5th, 2020, and bills for payment on February 14th and 21st, 2020. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski.
That brings us to repository sales. Do we have anybody here this evening regarding a repository sale? Hello there.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Council. My name is Jay Brenneman, 4118 State Street,
Bob Hand, 317 East 30th Street.
and we are applying to acquire 329 East 28th Street for the Academy Neighborhood Association and the Tool Lending Library. I think we provided a copy of the Times News ran a feature on it on January 31st.
See that?
So Jay, I'm going to ask the questions I always ask, and I know that the answers are in this story, I read the story, but do you have the resources to take care of what you're going to do, and do you have a timeline as to when you'll get this accomplished?
Yes, so a good question, but multiple answers to that. Yes, so we do have our own fundraising that we've accomplished, also a grant from ECRA that we've recently received. Also, we do, as the tool lending librarian, and that program's mission is to alleviate blight and to clean up properties in the community and to give neighbors the tools they need to build better neighborhoods. And of course, the Academy neighborhood, which has led countless neighborhood cleaning initiatives, et cetera. We do have lawnmowers and property cleanup equipment with the tool lending library. We have over 3,000 tools right now. So yes, we do have the tools on hand, the people on hand to maintain the property and whip it into shape, and to provide the tools for the neighbors to continue to do work on their own neighborhoods as well, their own properties.
Thank you.
Good. Great.
Do you have tools for cars too, by chance?
So I love that question because nobody has really asked, but I've received donations on them. So I do have a variety. I've always wondered, so I do have a number of automotive repair, a number of tools for automotive repair, but you're the first person to actually ask as to using it, and I love that because I wish more people would, but yes, we do.
My husband was looking for one and asked our relatives, and I thought, well, it'd be nice to.
Yeah, we have just about everything, whether you're doing plumbing, electric, whether you're doing outside landscaping. We have just about everything under the sun.
That's nice.
Small note, this will be of interest to you. Our insurance agent has asked us not to have the ramps that you back up onto or jacks.
Okay.
Other than that.
So we don't have those.
I don't blame you.
Yeah,
Other
we,
than that.
I wouldn't want to make
He had a
one.
list. He had a
Yeah.
list of things. So.
Thank you. Sounds wonderful.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Any other questions, Council?
Yes, I have a comment. Just want to say that's a great program. It's really exciting to see that grow even larger. And just had one quick question. I know you probably have this covered. I probably know what the answer is, but I'm guessing the neighborhood supports having this location, and they're all behind this initiative.
Yeah, and there were some surveys that had been done over the past couple of years that had the neighborhood has expressed interest in that property, and also in having community space for public community gardens, because there's space for that, flower gardens, et cetera, and just a meeting space for the community to get together. And also that in Erie Refocus, that street is highlighted as a street to focus on for redevelopment, and ECRA has established that for one of their Renaissance blocks as well. So it all kind of fits into piece with that. But yeah, the community has been involved quite a bit over the last few years as far as the use and function of that space.
Great, thank you so much.
And also to that, whatever we do on that property is going to be done in consultation with the neighborhood, particularly the immediate neighbors, because we want to make sure whatever is done there is complementary to the homeowners and property owners and people that live in the area.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's wonderful.
Any other repository sales this evening? Any other repository sales this evening? Hearing none, that brings us to citizens to be heard. Pre-scheduled was Tom Carney. Is he here this evening?
Praise be Jesus Christ forever and ever. Distinguished members of council, Mr. President, Mayor, citizens of the city of Erie. I come here for kind of just a brief
Mr.
thing.
Carney, could you please, even though,
Oh, my
just for
address,
the record,
Thomas Carney, 1012 Shenley Drive, Erie, Pennsylvania, /809 West 12th Street, Erie, Pennsylvania, 16501, as a magisterial district judge. I come here twofold. I gave Rose some flyers just on the news just a little bit ago. They were talking about the important need to acknowledge real ID. I have one in my wallet. After October 1st, if you don't get real ID, a lot of these citizens in this Commonwealth and the city will be in peril, and they'll be trying to rush up to there to 7600 Peach Street and get it changed, and it's a very complicated process. So I brought information on that. What brings me here before council today is, as a magisterial district judge, I've had the pleasure and the opportunity, and I say this humbly, as a humanitarian mission, to serve the city of Erie now for quite a few years. I was this district judge up in the 6th Ward in 1993, and now I have been in the 3rd and 4th Ward for the last 15 years. What I bring to your attention is something that I've learned throughout the years about, it's not so much your aptitude, but your attitude that determines your altitude. The Erie Police right now, they're the front lines of everything that we're doing. And I'm glad we have some great open minds here on council that maybe can address the issue. Back in 1993, our Erie police officers wore a badge, a uniform. They had a gun and a flashlight and a billy club. And they responded and protected and served. Today, they wear a gun, they wear a taser, they wear a Narcan kit, they wear knives, they wear pepper spray, they wear vests, they wear masks, they wear armor. And then, you know what they do before and after they go to their shift? They go down to the basement of this building into what I call a dungeon. I wouldn't go down there and shower myself. When I'm appealing to you, and I've appealed to the liaison to the police department, Ed Brzezinski, and welcome back aboard, Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, sir.
And I've heard there's been members that might have taken a tour down there. Don't we want the best facilities to put our best people forward on our streets that are fighting for everything that's really important to us? I'm a good listener. And what I've heard when I was a judge 27 years ago and what I have for the last 15 years, there's two things that really lower the morale on the Erie Police Department. Raises by mayor or merit, unless they're according, or that locker room. The same locker room that was down there that I was a judge 27 years ago is still the same hole that these people have to go and dress and clean up and go out and protect and serve our city every day. I'm asking you, I'm appealing to you. It might be a small thing. I worked at International Paper for 30 years. When we got a new locker room, if like a brand new car, we all wanted to be a better employee. We were happier. We were more joyful. Don't we want that for our police department? So I'm saying is I am the stalwart between the Erie Police Department and the citizen. It is my job, as I've advocated for the crossing walks at Frontier Park, and we've got those done, and I'd like to thank Ms. Parmenter for helping with that issue, and some of the other things that are really important for safety, health, and welfare. But let's put our best foot forward for our Erie police officers and give them the best facilities so when they come home. I met with the chief last Friday. 2 Erie police officers drive mopeds. One, Tom Berlelli, rides his moped back to Mill Creek in his uniform. Now they think the EPD's got a moped unit. And then Officer Wilson goes down there and changes because he drives his moped home and he don't want everyone to know he's an officer on the moped. You know, it's a funny story between two issues, but to this day, an issue that's been transparent and complaining, I hear it over and over and over. So I'm just asking you, is I here and I like to protect and serve and address this for you. Please address this issue. There's got to be a grant writer. We could address the Spader. I go to church every Sunday with Tim DeCastro. Erie Insurance has been a great partner. If there's anything we can do to improve the facilities for our police officers, I appeal to each and every one of you. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here and serving. We have a great, diverse members of council that I haven't seen in a long time. And Mayor, I've been praying for you every day since we met at the march, and I'm wishing you well. I'm wishing all the citizens of this city well, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Hello, my name's Julia Calippo, and I'm here to speak about parking tickets. I reside in the city of Erie. I received a parking ticket in front of the courthouse on January 30th. There are no meters there. There's just a little metal post where there used to be meters, a whole string of them. I assumed that maybe you guys were replacing the meters, and I said, oh, we don't need to put any money in the meters, you know, we'll be okay. Well, we came out, there was a, I think, $15 ticket on the car, which I was very shocked and surprised, and not in a good way. I called the mayor's office, who did not return my call. I called Pike Parking Authority, who basically said, too bad, so sad, pay your ticket, and that call it a day. I said, they're not marked. They should have an individual marking on every post to clearly state what the directions are. There's a pay here box, which I've never in my life, and I'm not that old, but I don't know what a pay here box is. If I see one, I thought it was just for like fines or something to drop off for citizens. I went on February 10th and I paid this parking ticket and was slammed with an extra $10 late fee. So I paid it within a 10 business day period, but I was still charged a $10 fee. Now, when I called the police officer and the parking authority and the mayor and your special advocate line here at the city to investigate it, I learned that it's 10 calendar days and not 10 business days. Therefore, even though my 10-day period was on the weekend, they expected me to come down to a drop box here within the city building and put my money into a drop box, which makes absolutely no sense. You know, if someone has an action at the courthouse, you can't take a legal brief and put it in a drop box at the courthouse for when the next business day occurs. Then they can process your legal brief. It goes by calendar days for your legal briefs or any actions in the court systems itself. Thusly, the parking ticket should be in the exact same form. It should go by the actual calendar days, business days, not holidays. I went to a parking authority board meeting after that, and I spoke to the board, who basically, you know, I said, you know, this is the situation. I said, a lot of people in Erie are on disability. I said, you're fraudulently receiving money from people that you shouldn't be. I said, you know, there's people that are getting booted for a very small amount of fines. And I expressed that I was at McDonald's recently and somebody had a boot on their car. Or I'll be driving down State Street and somebody will have a parking boot on their car because they didn't pay a $15 parking ticket. You know what I mean? And that's shameful. We're supposed to be a tourist destination. People are supposed to come here. They're gonna wanna see Erie and all the great family experiences we have, which we do. It's a good place to live and to visit. But when you go to McDonald's and somebody's got a boot on their car, like that's just not a positive role model for the city at all. And what people may not understand in the public is that that $15 ticket turns into $25. It turns into $100 and goes to the magistrate. If you don't pay that ticket, you go to jail. You go to jail for a $15 parking ticket. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you're indigent, if you are impoverished on disability, you're a grandma with a wheelchair, grandma might not know that she had to put that money in a magic pay here box. okay? Grandmas don't understand how those boxes work, or that it should be 10 calendar days or business days, and that they could go to jail. That's not a good thing. I don't want to see my elders incarcerated over a parking ticket because the parking authority is trying to get rich quick. That's not a good thing for our city. Now, at that meeting, I had spoke and I said that I'm not going to continue to, tolerate these things. I'm going to be going to the law library, and I'm going to research the fact that the citizens have been being raped of their money, of their freedom, based on a parking ticket to a city where people can hardly afford food. This city is very food insecure itself, let alone to be parking insecure. And I think that everyone needs to come ahead and do something, especially city council. You guys just voted to raise the fines for parking tickets themselves. You're putting grandma in jail. You guys are putting grandmas and grandpas in jail. And I don't agree with that. And nobody should agree with that. And somebody needs to research the fact that those meter posts are not marked. They are not legally within the allotted space of the notice of where you're supposed to pay for that magic meter, the pay here box. It's not a good situation at all. So I'm really hoping that everybody up there has the compassion for people that need to pay their parking tickets or have leniency in regards to such, and stop sending them to jail for a $15 parking ticket, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, if you could stay till the end, I'm sure at the end, Attorney Betza can mention something to you. Thank you. At the end of our meeting, we have times, some people just say their 5 minutes and they leave, and they never get to hear what we have to say because we're not able to speak to you at this time. Okay? Thanks.
Hello there.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Sydney Zimmerman. I reside at 413 West 9th Street in Erie, Pennsylvania. I, too, am here to speak about the parking tickets. I understand that the fees have gone up. I understand that they were voted on recently to do so. What I did not understand previously was the difference in amounts versus getting a ticket here on State Street with the meters versus perhaps getting a ticket within your neighborhood for the odd-even switch, and being able to park in your own neighborhood. Let's say you don't have a driveway or you don't have a spot in the driveway, especially downtown where people tend to rent a lot. First and foremost, I think that the cost difference between getting one on a meter versus one in a neighborhood, I don't understand the rationale for having that cost be about, I think it's 3 times more within a neighborhood versus on the street. And also, I'd like to point out the fact that I understand that it was brought up at one point when the MCOA firm who consulted on this issue, I think they're from Illinois, had come into the city and consulted on this issue about raising the cost to help deter delinquency, meaning, it would inspire people to pay off their tickets faster if they knew that they had a higher fine attached to it when waiting to pay for it. But somebody had brought up at that point giving a longer period of time to pay off that ticket if the fee was to increase, and I believe the response was, we're trying to encourage people to pay it faster because we do have 3 million or so in unpaid tickets. And although I can understand that to an extent, when we're talking about an increase that people might not know about, and the increase being triple, and if you get maybe 2 tickets, so your ticket has gone from $10 to $30, and if you get 2 tickets, instead of it being $20, it's $60. Well, a lot of people in these places aren't necessarily going to have those funds to pay that off immediately, especially if they're getting more than one, whether that's due to, being irresponsible, or perhaps something happening like a car breaking down. And so my first suggestion would be to give people more time to pay it off, especially if it's going to be increased that much, but also to bring the cost of the fees to be equal, so that people, especially in neighborhoods who tend to be poorer, aren't going to be punished unfairly. And I understand that the reason that we have those fluctuating sides, is to create better paths for our snowplows and for our street cleaners. And so to that end, I understand why we would want a ticket to ensure people are following that rule so that we can get the streets cleared in a timely and effective manner. But especially on days when we're not doing plowing and we're not doing street cleaning, when you have those fees and they're that high and they have to be paid in such a short period of time before they start to increase at such a high rate, I think it might be good to look into, okay, why do we have these laws set up the way that we do? And on the days that the criteria isn't met, there's not going to be snow plowing and there's not going to be street cleaning. Do we need to enforce that and give people tickets, especially people who might not be able to pay them? Because it's not like you're getting people from Frontier coming in to pay tickets. First and foremost, they have driveways over there, so they're less likely to be parking on the streets. But if you do drive through those parts of town, you'll find that the rules are different or they don't exist. There aren't rules about going to park in Frontier. And in fact, I've thought about taking my car over to Frontier at night and walking home and leaving a sign in the window that says, I park here because it's cheaper for me to park in your neighborhood than it is mine. Because I won't get punished for parking on the street in your neighborhood the same way I would in mine. And this can be seen, there are different levels of enforcement and different levels of regulations throughout the city, whether you're in Glenwood, whether you are next to, well, that's the same area, but whether you're on the east side, whether you are on Brown Avenue kind of area. And so I think just taking a second to stop and think about why we have these laws and who is being affected most often by these laws would be beneficial to people in the city, and you wouldn't feel, there wouldn't be as much anger or resentment for having to pay these things because they would be enforced when they need to be, but people would be given some leniency in the areas that they need it. So that's my 2 cents on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Elspeth Cayley, 1232 West 11th Street. I just have one question, and I don't know, maybe you guys will engage with me and maybe you won't. So the parking tickets and the fines and all the money that's collected from residential neighborhoods where people don't have driveways, is that money that's collected being reinvested back into those impoverished neighborhoods? Well, maybe somebody can email me an answer at some point.
And yes, we'll check into that for you.
All right, thank you.
But I promise you it's going to the city as a whole,
As a whole.
to the budget itself. Any other citizens to be heard this evening? Any other citizens to be heard? I'll go out of content here a little bit. I see a lot of people out there that normally don't show up at our council meetings. Would be very honored to know where you're from and what class, or you may be, oh, all right, we got a spokesman. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tristan Stewart. I'm a senior nursing student at Gannon. I'm here with my fellow nursing students. We're here for our nursing power politics class. It's like a health policy course.
Cool. Thanks for coming. Any other citizens to be heard this evening? Any other citizens to be heard? We'll move on with the agenda. Rose?
Ordinances for final passage. Council File Number 16148, Official Ordinance Number 4/2020, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $15,000 from unappropriated and unanticipated revenue for the expenditure thereof. Contribution is from the Mercy Terrace Apartments for the purchase of police, fire, and winter maintenance equipment. By Ms. Schaaf and second by Ms. Allen, the Council File Ordinance Bill Number 16148, and now known as Official File Ordinance Number 4/2020, be finally passed by the City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council passed Official File Ordinance Number 4/2020 finally by yeas 7, nays 0. Council File Number 16149, Official Ordinance Number 5, 2020, an ordinance in accordance with the 2020 City of Erie Capital Fund budget. The sum of $100,000 is appropriated from unappropriated and anticipated revenue for use by the City of Erie. This amount represents a contribution from Gannon University made to the City of Erie in 2019 to be used in the Department of Public Safety. By Mr. Schaaf, second by Ms. Allen, the council file ordinance bill number 16149, and now known as official file ordinance number 5, 2020, be finally passed by the city council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City council passed official file ordinance number 5, 2020, finally by yeas 7, nays 0. Council File 16150, Official Ordinance Number 6, 2020. An ordinance amending Article 901.06 fees by amending subsection C2 to increase the degradation fee. By Mr. Witherspoon, seconded by Ms. Schaaf, the Council File Ordinance Bill Number 16150, and now known as Official File Ordinance Number 6, 2020, be finally passed by the City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council passed official file ordinance number 6, 2020, finally by yeas 7, nays 0. Ordinances for first reading. Council file number 16151, an ordinance appropriating the sum of $39,234 from unappropriated and anticipated revenue and providing for the expenditure thereof for the 2018 Justice Assistance Grant. By Mr. Brzezinski, seconded by Mr. Keys, the council file ordinance number 16151, having been read, is hereby adopted on first reading by the City Council. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. City Council read and adopt council file ordinance number 16151 by yeas 7, nays 0 on first reading. Bless you.
Bless you.
That'll take us
Thank
into
you.
new business, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I move the balance.
Second. Do we have any separations this evening? I personally want to separate number 1 under new business.
Alrighty. All right, moving the balance of the agenda. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mr. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski. Sponsored by Mr. Keys, second by Ms. Allen. Resolved by the Council of the City of Erie that the proper city officials are hereby authorized to settle the claims of Jeffrey and Patricia Jackson for the injury she sustained in a slip and fall which occurred at 4319 Peach Street on July 12, 2016. The plaintiffs have agreed to accept $7,500 to settle any and all claims against the City of Erie in the lawsuit filed in the Court of Common Pleas. Discussion?
Well, once again, I separated this one because we've had past claims against the city for different issues of falling in the street or falling on the sidewalks or tripping over curbs. Once again, I know this may not be a large amount when you say $7,500. It's just one of those principles I have and precedents that I hate, bad precedents being set, that if somebody trips outside on city property, they're entitled to some settlement. But I don't know Mr. and Mrs. Jackson from Adam. I don't know the whole situation. According to this, they slipped and fell, and they're looking for a settlement.
How much did they ask for at the beginning, Mr. Winarski?
I believe it was more, our solicitor would have that information. But we're settling a claim from 2016, July 12, slipped and fall on July 12th. I don't know what I know we have our winter season. It's one of those precedents, like I've said in the past for other claims against the city. I just am not comfortable with these settlements. I know sometimes it's a less cost to the city to settle them without going to court, but sometimes principle has to come into play, and I believe some of these we should fight. With that, I'm voting no on this one. The solicitor's here now. Mr. Brzezinski had a question. Attorney Betza.
They were initially asking for $750,000.
I did give him the memo.
Okay,
It's all in it.
yeah.
Pen and
I
paper.
mean, I think to talk about the specifics of the case and a reason of why we would settle or how we would handle it would be appropriate for executive session, not open session. What that may have been the demand. I don't recall specifically as I sit here right now. That sounds right. All I can tell you is that it's our recommendation that we approve that. If you wish to discuss the specifics of the case, we certainly can do so in executive session.
Can we put some type of addendum on it stating that this isn't to set any kind of a landmark decision, that every time somebody comes to us with a slip and fall, they ask for $1 million, they're gonna get 10% of it?
Well,
Can't do anything like
you
that?
can say whatever you want. I mean, people can
Yeah,
interpret
I'm
it.
just saying.
What I
That's
can tell you is that the city takes every claim serious, that we don't recommend resolution unless we think it's in the best interest of the city and the taxpayers. And we are not paying out, I've been here, this is now my 3rd year. I think this is the 3rd case that we've brought to city council in that 3-year period for relatively small amounts recommending resolution. There are times you need to take a case to trial or need to defend a case. And this case was, again, we could talk about specifics in executive session, but this case was thoroughly investigated. It's up to the point of litigation. And so if the case is not resolved, then it will go to trial. It's ready to go to trial. Our recommendation is that this is in the best interest of the taxpayers.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I would just like to say that having, met with Mr. Betza since I came on council as the liaison for those 2 years, he was always very thorough in explaining what was in the best interest of the city. So I defer to his judgment on this. And as he pointed out, this is, what'd you say, Ed, the third time?
I believe so.
I guess what threw me off a little bit, just for the slip and fell on July 12th. It wasn't December 12th, January 12th, but with that being said, we can move on.
All right, roll call. Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Keys, Mr. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon, Mr. Winarski.
No.
This resolution will adopt 6 ayes to 1 nay. And that will take us to committee reports, Mr. President.
Ms. Allen, sure.
Kathy Schaaf and I went to the zoning hearing board meeting last week, right, Kathy? And they didn't have anything on their agenda, but their solicitor, Mr. Wagner, I think,
Yes.
gave the board members, just did a review for them about the short-term rental court cases, including the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision in the slice of life case. This relates to Airbnb. So it was good for us to sit in and hear. There weren't any recommendations one way or the other, but it was just good to hear the chronology of how we got to where we're at. And then tomorrow night, we'll have that study session with our solicitor to fill us in on a couple of zoning issues. I went to Blighted Property Review Committee and the Erie Neighborhood Growth Partnership, and I want to thank the mayor and Kathy Rosdick for the really good job that they are doing in letting people know about activating our vision. Actually, I think you also talked about that yesterday at the Downtown Partnership lunch. So in terms of communication of what the administration has set out to do in terms of its broad goals and its key performance indicators, do I have that terminology right? The key performance indicators, how the city is going to be measuring that we're making progress. It's not just a question of having these measurements, but letting I guess the word is stakeholders know that this is taking place. So I've been very impressed by the fact that every time I go to a meeting, the mayor and/or his staff are there to talk about the activating our vision. So thank you for doing that. And I think that we went to a couple of us were at. I think Michael was there yesterday, and Kathy and I don't know if anybody else was there at the Downtown Partnership luncheon. It was a very informative session in terms of how the downtown has recognized people with their awards. They gave an award to Donnie, who is Mr. Downtown, and Mr. Friendliness, Faith Kindig, and Teresa Guerin, I believe. Citizens who are making a difference in making our downtown the way we want it to be. So that was very exciting and encouraging.
Thank you. Mr. Witherspoon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Real brief, the Erie Housing Authority has completed their annual report to HUD as well as their 5-year report to HUD. Once that report has been approved by HUD, they will receive $4.6 million for capital funds. That's my report. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. President. I attended a public safety dinner sponsored by UPMC at the Shrine Club where we were informed in specifics. There was a doctor that said the importance of going to an emergency room. He talked about heart attacks and how it is to your life's benefit. Some people wait and then the heart attack does much more damage. And there was other talks as well, but that one just really spoke to home because sometimes you're at home and you're like, I'm okay. And then, it's a matter of life and death, go seek help. I was at the City Planning Commission meeting on Tuesday, and they're going to do a publication of their annual report to all of us. I got to see it there, and they talked about what they did this previous year. Like Liz mentioned, the Downtown Partnership Luncheon was filled with good people, and I love being downtown, not just because I'm on council, but my whole life I've been going to Perry Square with the kids and with little activities way back then, and now there's more and more and more activities coming up. So it's very positive to have a family-friendly atmosphere down there. Mel and I listened to the CDBG hearings last Friday and got to see the people that want money for programs at the YMCA. Remember, that was really awesome. They have teen programs so that the teenagers in Erie have a safe, there's all different kinds of classes that they can attend. And so I hope they get the money that they need. I congratulate the mayor who was attending the Grassroots Coalition meeting I was there, and he once again promoted his Activating Our Mission at the Grassroots Coalition meeting. And Jeremy Peterson from the EMTA was also there about talking about the bus shelters that will be going up in their neighborhood as well. Like Liz mentioned, it was good to listen to Mr. Wagner's talk on the short-term rental situations. I also met with Christopher Gerhart and Jeremy Peterson and talked to me about the updated happenings going on at the EMTA, which I'll report to you as well. The East Side Association with Margarita Dangle on East 26th Street had Veronica Fields there, and that was so important because she talked about how people can get home assistance for financial needs of their house. It cannot be a multi-family home. It cannot be a duplex. It needs to be one family, one house. But there, if you make, like if you're just one person and make under $37,000, you can apply. And she basically walks you through the application process if you are in need of this. You do have to have some upfront money and plan on being in your home for a period of time, but this is a state-funded assistance program that she is helping with, so I think that's so important. I went to the ECOG meeting at Lawrence Park, and that was my first meeting, and I was thrilled to be with so many other people. And the ECRA has a grant application opening for combined municipalities. So I was in discussion later with our city planner, who's working on some municipality grants that hopefully we could get when two municipalities work together. So I think that's really important. I attended the Gordman's ribbon cutting, and I'm glad that yes, Peoples is gone, but there's definitely a new store there, and it doesn't seem that it's going to be like an overly high-end, costly one. I'm the one that went into the police locker room the other day, and definitely need something there. So thank you. Have a great day. I still have more, but you know, time's up.
That's, you did quite well. You're very busy. Mr. Brennan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a report. I went to the Parking Authority board meeting this past week. Just a couple things to report. There's some minor renovation work going on at the garage at the UPMC Hammett. As everybody knows, there's some discussion that's going to be going on soon with just some brainstorming on the relationship and how we're working with how they're working with the city. So that's going to continue. So we'll hear more about that soon and give our opinion about how that works. The EPA continues to look for ways to make parking easier. They're looking at adding further parking kiosks and also making it easier for easier ways to pay. Also, a report on the Historic Preservation Task Force. Our work continues. It is a 2-year task force, so that goes on till not this June, but to the following June. But some things we're working on, there's property condition surveys to survey for historical significance of buildings. We're looking at historic review board, developing a historic overlay zoning ordinance in the future, and also design guidelines. So there's a lot of things going on there. I think there's a lot of good work going on. Public Works, I have a meeting this coming Wednesday with Dave Mulvihill. So if there's any issues anyone has on council, let me know. I'll be having that meeting with him. It's our first meeting to talk about any issues that are coming up or anything that's coming down to council. And the last thing I want to report is I went to an event in Buffalo. You know, I'm always looking for ideas to kind of bring back, but there was an event called Build Up Buffalo. It was a symposium targeted for business leaders, contractors, and also architects. That's kind of the main reason I was there. But it focused on learning and understanding how to work together and build a better Buffalo, to learn how the other side thinks, motivations, best practices, success stories. It was really, really interesting, and there was a lot of great ideas. And again, the event helps them determine how to best move forward with a region. But some takeaways on that program were localism was very important to them. It was a kind of a recurring theme in every presentation. Using local architects, local contractors, getting input from local residents was all important. And Buffalo's really come a long way, and there's a lot of progress being planned in the future. So, maybe Erie can do a similar event in the future. I know there's a lot of events that are similar to that, but it was just a great event, and I wanted to share that with council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Keys.
Thank you, Mr. President. This week I attended the Downtown Partnership also. It was great to see all the downtown businesses represented and that all the support that the core of our city is getting and support from all the different organizations. I also attended the Serve Erie Eastside Eagles neighborhood meeting. It was informative. They didn't have a lot on their agenda this week or this month. I'm also have had conflict of interest with things going on at the time of the board meetings that the liaison with, but I'll meet offline with the organizations that I'm liaison with.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, Mr. Wojnarowski. I'm a little bit busy. I'm liaison to the police department. For one thing, I did talk to Judge Carney last week, and I told him I'm all for updating facilities for our guys and ladies downstairs. But before we go any further, we got to find out what the dollar sign is all about. So when we did have that conversation, he was going to talk to Chief Dan. I'm going to do that also this week, and we'll get some figures. I already have my president of fundraising, Ms. Schaff, there. She volunteered to start. So we'll get, one way or another, we're going to get the money to fix that thing up. You young people were out there, and you heard a lot of kind of negative stuff. This is an exciting city. So many nice things are happening. That guy over there is doing a lot of it to get people excited. This thing with the parking, don't forget, it's not people that are 1 or 2 tickets and behind. They're hurt, definitely hurt. But we've got people that have 8, 12, 15 tickets. They're hiding their cars in different places so they don't get caught. We need to get the lesson out much better. That poor lady over by the courthouse. If you've been to Fort Lauderdale or Chicago or Atlantic City or some of the big cities, you have no trouble. You take your credit card, you go to that little kiosk on the street there, and you get 2 hours or whatever, and you park your car, and you don't worry about it. But a lot of people in Erie don't go to those places. And I'm at the courthouse quite often for a number of different things, and it's confusing. It looks like there are no parking meters on the north side by the courthouse. And I don't know for sure, even I didn't get into it, to find out who actually did it, but I feel sorry for the folks that got nailed. Because I didn't understand it completely, or I didn't have my credit card, wanted it to. I looked for a parking meter and I put a quarter in there. I knew that was the right way to go. But, anytime you're looking around and something looks just like it's free, somebody's gonna pay for it. Nobody kid you about that. But if any of you kids, and I call you kids because I'm an old man, if you have parking tickets, get them taken care of and get them quickly. That same thing that the lady spoke about happened to me eons ago when I was, my real estate company, I had a closing downtown. And it was a windy, rainy day. I didn't even know I got a ticket. But when they did the swoop, my one ticket, back then it was supposed to be like $3 or $5. I had to pay $33 to the magistrate for one ticket. So I can understand why people are getting upset. And we have to do a much better job of having everybody understand exactly what we're up against out there. Almost $3 million in parking violations that people aren't paying for. That's the bad part of it. But keep the happy stuff, because we have so many wonderful things happening. I'm also liaison to the baseball field and UPMC Convention Center, and I got a complete tour with Mr. Wells last week. a lot of wonderful things happening there. If you're a baseball fan or a hockey fan or a basketball fan, I was there building, it was Wood Park back then. I was on council when we did it, and it was exciting. Now we're gonna have actually studios almost on left field line. It's gonna be magnificent, believe me. And if you like to have a glass of Diet Coke, Mr. Melody's putting a couple beautiful new restaurants in our parking authority down there. It's gonna be one on the bottom floor, and up above, he's gonna have open decks. The glass areas will open up on beautiful evenings that we have to see the sunset. A lot of beautiful things happening in Erie, and that's why as an old man, I'm here. I wanna be part of that. Believe in Erie, stay here, kids. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Brzezinski. I just want to thank my colleagues on council for everywhere they've been, everywhere they're going, and with their liaisons, their appointments to, the things they don't even have to go to that they can make on behalf of this council. There's just, like Mr. Brzezinski said, there's a lot going on here. A lot good, some bad. When you have a $3 million deficit in the parking authority or in our parking tickets, that takes away from good things we can invest in this city. So if we can get rid of some of the negatives, like a $3 million deficit, and turn it into a positive to help make this city grow, help keep taxes to a bare minimum, to help take care of our streets. We did have something on our agenda. They called it a degradation fee. And for you people that don't know, that's when the utilities come in and they cut certain cutouts in our streets. Whether they got to do repairs or they got to do improvements. But as soon as you cut into something, what was a perfectly good street, you're deteriorating a bit or giving it a quicker chance to deteriorate. And for people that have been around, we've been spending upwards of $4 or $5 million a year in trying to keep our streets paved and street renovations, and it's a very tough task with the climate we're in. So when we have utilities that have to do their job, don't get us wrong, but when we have to charge them a fee to do this, understand it isn't for us to make money, it helps to us pay for the improvements that need to be done after these cuts are taken on their end. So people got to realize it's not so much a revenue for the city, it's just to help offset the cost that we pay yearly to pave our streets. Other than that, I want to thank the Gannon kids for joining us this evening. Actually, if you want me to sign you in for a couple more hours, I have no problem with that. But you actually picked a good meeting because it looks like we're going to get out here a little earlier tonight. But thanks for coming out tonight. Thank you. Ms. Controller.
I do have a report. We did, the aggregate board met, and the funds are doing very well. They finished the year at a 22% rate of return. They outperformed 90% of the other public funds out there, so they are really doing what they're supposed to be doing. The value of the funds as of today are $307 million, so we saw just roughly about a $3 million increase from December until the end of February in here. So we're not going to make any changes. There was no recommendations to make any changes. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. And
Why would you, right?
The Water Reserve Fund has also increased to about 13.1 million, so that's increasing. That had a 6% rate of return. So again, no changes there with the Water Reserve, and in another quarter I'll have a report for you guys again.
We like the good news. We want to hear that every quarter.
Hopefully we can do that.
No changes necessary. We like that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor Schember.
Thank you, Chairman Winarski, and I also want to welcome the Gannon students here. I'm a Gannon graduate as well, so someday some of you could be mayors. Maybe not in Erie, but somewhere around the world here, around the country. The thing I want to start out with is important for everyone, including each one of you out here, and that has to do with the census, the 2020 census. Every 10 years, the United States does a census of all the people in the country. It does that to divide up over $600 billion in revenue that they distribute to local municipalities across the country. Over 600 billion, that's with a B, dollars. We get about 4 million roughly a year, and we're in the process right now with the community development block grants, which is that 4 million I'm talking about. We're last Friday and this Friday, between the two Fridays, we're going to talk to 18 different, get presentations from 18 different local nonprofits that are applying for funds. So with the census, for every person that's not counted, and we know in 2010 there were literally thousands of people living in Erie that were not counted. For everyone not counted, we lose $2,100 per year from the federal government every year for the next 10 years. And these are funds to help Erie's most needy that we lose. If this year, if we say we miss 1,000 people in the city, that means we lose $2.1 million per year, every year for the next 10 years, or $21 million the city loses to help Erie's most needy. So again, it's important everyone does the census. Information will be coming out in mid-March when you get something in the mail. If you get something in the mail, you can complete the census online, you can by phone, or you can mail it in. By the end of April, anybody that hasn't responded yet will be getting contacted by representatives of the census to try to get a good count. So I just want to reinforce how important it is that everybody gets counted. The other important thing about this, two other important things. One is, not only is money decided by the census, but our representation in the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. is determined by this as well. And over the last 30 years or so, Pennsylvania has lost about 5 seats in the U.S. Senate because of the numbers. In 2010, we lost 1 seat. We have 1 less seat. Pennsylvania does 1 less representative, 1 less vote in Washington, D.C. So again, that's another reason it's very important. The CDBG presentations, again, are going on, and you'll be getting more information about that as we go forward. We're hearing from the last 8 this Friday. I want to thank Council for passing the Water Authority appraisal today. We're hoping by early April to have a value on the Water Authority for you, and then we'll start talking again about the possibility of them prepaying their payments to us so that we could get at least $90 million to pay down debt. That means they pay us about $4 million a year in rent, the Water Authority does, and they pay us the $90 million up front, and we use that to pay down debt. That would save us about $6.2 million per year in debt payments for the next 30 years. So that's something we want to talk about, and Gordon Mann will be here, I believe, at your next meeting in early March, the first week of March, to present his final presentation on our finances. We're looking to implement everything he's recommending, basically. I attended Bids for Kids on Saturday, the 15th. Wabtec runs it now. It used to be GE. I think this is like the 25th year for it, and they provide funds. It's a fundraiser, basically, for local nonprofits, mainly that help kids. Shriners Hospital, Make-A-Wish, and the Boys and Girls Club. And they've raised, I believe, in the 25 years, over $600 million now for local nonprofits. And GE used to do it, so I'm real happy that Wabtec's continuing to do that. Also want to thank the 3 council members that attended the Downtown Partnership meeting earlier this week, for the lunch meeting. It was very inspiring, and again, a good example of what Ed was talking about, how people are coming together and good things that are happening here in Erie. Our topics for our press conference tomorrow are an exciting presentation about the Police Athletic League. They're getting a nice donation that'll be announced. We're gonna present the winners. Some of our police officers won actually the Patriot Award, which is a national award. We're gonna recognize them at the meeting. There's gonna be a police ball coming up, which will help to fund the Police Athletic League. That's gonna be talked about. And Frank Stramilla is gonna showcase some of the events going on this weekend in downtown Erie. And I'll be giving a report on Alerta as well. I can't give you advanced notice because there is a media present right now, so, but it's another good report that I'll be giving tomorrow on Alerta. Also on Monday, February 10th, back on the 10th, it was a National Salute Week to veterans, and I had the chance to go up to the Veterans Hospital up on 38th Street and spend an hour going around meeting with veterans, and it was very inspiring. And most of these veterans are bound to their either chair or bed, and they've been through a lot. Most of them are older, but it was really inspiring to meet with them, talk to them, and thank them for their service to the country. So thanks very much, and I look forward to the next meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Winarski, just for a point of fact,
Sure.
the mayor and I graduated from Gannon when it was a college.
That's right.
That's right. Attorney Betsy, you have anything to add to that?
I can't top that. I'm done.
Okay. With that, we're going to adjourn. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
City Council adjourns at 8:41 PM. Mr. Winarski, Ms. Allen, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Brzezinski, Mr. Case, Mrs. Schaaf, Mr. Witherspoon.